99 hustles. 99 hustles.
Welcome to the 99 Hustles podcast. I'm your host, Nick Carter.
Your co-host, International Fees.
And today we're joined by another exceptional, very focused, ambitious, and diligent entrepreneur and hustler, Tariq Johnson. Appreciate you for being on the show today, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. Tariq is one of my favorite quotes. He's not a businessman. He's a businessman. This guy from a young age, he's envisioned and embodied that hustler mantra. He opened his first franchise in 2017. Was able to generate over $470,000 in sales. But before we get to all the good stuff, Tariq, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on who you are and how you got into this space?
Yeah, sure. Glad to do it. Thanks again for having me. So I think probably the most appropriate place to start off is, it's kind of in high school. I was an athlete for a long time. I tried out for basketball when I was in middle school, didn't make the team. My uncle told me that I should wrestle. I thought, what the heck is wrestling like this? So I wind up having a long career in wrestling, and I was terrible when I first started. So my first year in club team of wrestling, I was 1-14, and my one win was from a forfeit.
Hey, wow. They all count the same at the end.
Yeah, you gotta get it how you live.
So, for me, and I wind up finishing my last 2 years in high school, 97 and 9, and finishing 5th in the state.
Wow.
Outside of actual high school, in some of the club seasons, I won a couple of state titles. And so for me, that really laid the foundation for how I kind of thought about business and growth overall. I always look back to wrestling, and I think, for me, with an important learning lesson there was that it's okay to be terrible when you first start, and it's okay to fail. But I wound up getting reading a book called The Secret when I was 18 years old, right as I was coming out of high school. And that was a key moment for me, because at that time I was starting to go down the wrong path, starting to hang out with the wrong people, do the wrong things. I just so happened to never be around when people were getting in trouble. And so I kind of lucked out from that sense. And I got my investment licenses at a young age. I started getting my investment licenses when I was 19 years old. And I just kept investing in myself. I kept signing up for seminars, paying for programs, hiring coaches, even when I didn't have the money. Wound up accumulating $15,000, $20,000 of credit card debt by the time I was 20, 21, because all of that money I was investing in myself and hiring coaches and programs. And so that's kind of my base story. And I spent many years as a financial advisor with my investment licenses, giving thousands of people advice, and then eventually wound up getting into franchising.
Now, did you always have an entrepreneurial mindset growing up? Like, were you always trying to find ways to make money, or was business your way of replacing all the time spent with wrestling?
Yeah, it's a good question. I always had a fascination with money.
Okay.
Ever since I was little. I don't know what caused it, but even my parents talk about this, which is my mom has 6 brothers and sisters. And for some reason, even when I was young, I'm talking, 6, 7, 8 years old, if one of my aunts were like, "Hey, can you give me a massage?" I'd be like, "Give me $2." And so I don't know where that came from. It's interesting with what is hardwired from us for whatever reason, and then what we build upon, and then what we learn, because no one in my family was really entrepreneurial. Okay. But what I do remember at a young age is I wanted a lot. Like, I always asked my parents for everything. I remember the first pair of Timberland boots that I wanted, and they were $140, and my dad was like, "I'm not buying $140 boots." He's like, "You come up with half the money, I'll put up the other half."
Yeah.
And I had half the money in a week. I think I was 11 years old, 12 years old.
Wow.
So
man. I guess my takeaway, like the one interesting thing is like that you were ranked pretty high wrestling like in the state, right? Some people, how important it is that feeling of winning at like a young age. A lot of people, I mean, you see that with professional athletes sometimes, like, why does he have a mental block? It's like, well, he didn't win anything in high school. He was on a bad team in high school. He's on a bad team in college, but you were introduced to winning at a very early age. You know, you kind of get used to it. And then The Secret kind of fed that, right? Because you started to think, you know, thoughts about how to positive thoughts about winning. I imagine you're also probably into like the Think and Grow Rich books also, right?
Oh yeah, and I actually got my my vision board right here.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, there you go.
You know, I'm a huge believer in that. You know, I've been doing this for the last 14 years, writing down my vision of what I want to create in my life. And what's crazy is that when I read The Secret and started to learn about the law of attraction, I thought about went back to wrestling. And although I was hustling, because between one off season, I wrestled 106 matches, which was 2 full seasons worth of wrestling I did in one summer. So I was wrestling all the time and sacrificing time with friends. But what I realized when I read The Secret was I used to lay in bed and I would picture myself, I would imagine myself winning wrestling tournaments, getting my hand raised and the crowd cheering. I didn't know what I was doing at that moment, but I was reprogramming my subconscious to be a winner. It just felt good to imagine it. And so when I read The Secret, I go, oh, that's how I wound up becoming successful in wrestling. And then you just apply those same principles to business.
Yeah, that's insane. It's so many parallels, right? Fees, like we hear that so frequently. Like,
no, and I was just gonna say, like, to bring it full circle, would you say that in the beginning you were pretty bad at business, and it took you to like you said you went into debt, you know, substantial amount of debt, chasing this vision of yours? So was that the same kind of process there, or did you start off bad and it was like eventually it hit?
Yeah, you know, I although it wasn't my first business, so to say, I think about my career starting in financial services, banking, and investing as kind of my first business overall, even though I was an employee. But yeah, I mean, I was terrible at sales, and I was basically in sales. And when you're a financial advisor, although you have licenses, you're giving people advice, you get paid based on your performance of the revenue you generate for the company. And so I was terrible, man. I would meet with 10 people. I get 1 or 2 people to say yes, because although I may seem like an extrovert, I'm actually very introverted. And so to answer your question, you know, I was bad at sales. And if you want to run a successful business, no matter what type of business, you have to be able to sell and influence, whether you're selling a product, a service, convincing people to come on a podcast,
an idea.
And so I was terrible at it, and it took a while to get better.
And Fees mentioned like you didn't have like naturally entrepreneurial spirit. Did you take any did you wrestle in college also, or did you just pick up like certifications?
No, I did not wrestle in college. So I wound up deciding not to wrestle in college.
Okay.
And I went to community college, got my investment licenses, and then dropped out.
Wow.
Realized that you can make a lot more money not continuing that path. So at that point, did investing like, you know, strike you like, wow, this is what I want to do? Or did you always like think that investing was just a tool to get to another place?
Yeah, both. So, you know, I love the aspect of giving people financial advice. The hard part was that, you know, I was a young kid that hadn't necessarily created a lot of wealth in my own life. So there was always like this insecurity and weirdness in the back of my mind that, you know, I'm giving people advice and I haven't done it myself, but my intentions were good. And, you know, I felt like I was giving good advice. And I think one of the lessons probably for some people in the audience is that they may be doing the same thing and trying to grow their business. They may not have necessarily produced all the results. But if you think about some of like the coaches in the NBA and some of the coaches in in sports teams, they weren't all the great players. And a lot of the times, the best players are terrible coaches. Look at Jordan as an owner.
Yeah.
I mean, his teams suck. Part of that, part of that has to do with the fact that he's a great player, but I think there's a different wiring. So anyways, I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and eventually do my own thing. And there was constantly that battle and that pull and tug of, how long do I stay an employee? How long do I stay an entrepreneur? What's the balance? How do I do both at the same time?
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And,
go
ahead.
What's that called when people like doubt themselves? Imposter syndrome. That's what that kind of sounds like. Imposter syndrome. Yeah. When you're like you didn't successfully,
you don't feel qualified.
Yeah. You don't feel qualified to talk to these people
until you get in a room with the people that you find are successful, and you realize, oh shit, they don't know anything either.
Yeah. No one's qualified.
It's just like, wait a minute, I've been doubting myself this whole time, thinking you were like the guru, and we walk into a room and it's like, oh, I don't need to be like. And that's a great point. Like, it's something that I think the audience can take, and anyone out there can take, that the biggest hurdle is always going to be yourself, right? Like you're always, for the most part, going to be your worst critic. And if you can convince yourself that you're actually, qualified, the rest, speaks for itself. So Tariq, you spoke about, getting your investing license, and that kind of was like your start in entrepreneurial path. Where did that take you? Like, from being an employee, at what point, where was the transition there?
Yeah. So it started to lead to different decisions. Here's the thing is that, one of the, I coach a lot of people on kind of making transitions overall, although my niche is franchising at the moment. Most of the people that reach out to me, they are individuals that are looking at franchising, but most importantly, they just want to leave their job and be an entrepreneur. Franchising is just kind of a spoke in the wheel that they're looking at. And so I really think about being an entrepreneur. I still was an entrepreneur even while I was working as an employee. So when I was an advisor, I wound up buying my first house. And then I started renting out a portion of my house while I was living in it. So my mortgage payment was $1,100 a month. But at some point, I rented out the first 2 floors for $800 a month. I was only paying $300 a month, and I was making 15 grand a month. Wow. So I was saving and investing. And for me, that was me being an entrepreneur, right? Mm-hmm. So, but to fast forward into when I opened up my first physical business, that was when my wife and I were living in California. I was working as an advisor at about a $60 million book of business with my clients. I think about 700 clients that I worked with. And that's when we opened up our first franchise location, which took about $300,000 to get open. So that was like the first really big entrepreneurial venture. But I always had little side hustles or things that I did.
Could you tell us what type of franchise did you open?
Yes, I opened up a juice and smoothie franchise. The brand is called Robex, which you guys probably know Robex because they're in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. They're all over the place.
Man, I haven't been outside in like a year now. I can't even remember what outside looks like.
This episode is sponsored by Robex smoothie right here. Go and get you one if you're in the DC DMV.
That's dope though, man. So, and then the interesting thing about your story is you eventually opened up a second franchise. So when you initially opened up that first physical location, was the goal in your mind always to expand, or did that come kind of like later?
Possibly. So when I opened up the first location, I was still working as a financial advisor. So the objective, the plan and the intention was, okay, with my investment licenses, I could not do things like this. Like I could not be on a podcast right now and talk anything about business. It wasn't allowed because of my licenses. And so I felt so limited in what I could do and in my entrepreneurial dream. So I thought, okay, at some point I want to leave, but I'm having months where I'm making $20,000, $30,000 a month from work. That's a hard transition to make.
Sure. Right.
So I thought, all right, let's start a business to create an additional income stream, continue to save and invest and build up more assets. and put myself in a position where once I make that transition, it's easier. So at the time, the plan was never to leave my job. It wasn't to leave advising right away. It was just to build something on the side. And then I had thought about the possibility of opening up more locations, but it just kind of happened naturally when we decided to make the move to Florida and found out there was an existing location with the same brand for sale in that area. It just so happened. It was just coincidence.
Got it. It was fate. So let's say someone, is looking to, they're in a position where they have a job, maybe they make a decent amount of money, but they have that same mindset where they want to be able to do whatever they want and own a franchise. How does someone get started with opening up a franchise?
Yeah, sure. Someone making a transition just depends on their situation. Like some people, if they don't have a family and based on their personality, the best thing is to just leave, cut the cord, burn the bridge, and dive fully in. But that's not the proper solution for everyone. It depends on their situation. Someone's looking at getting into a franchise and they are currently working for someone else. The first thing is to create a vision, right? Like, so in my 7-step blueprint to business profits in 60 days, which is that free PDF on my website, that's step one, because you have to make all of your decisions with your end destination in mind. A lot of people, what they get caught up in is they go, I don't know what I want. I don't know what the destination is. Start with what you do know, right? So for someone who wants to make that transition, what are you looking for? Are you just looking to supplement your income? Or are you looking to make the transition 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And then that depends on what sort of franchise they get into, because some franchises require you to be there every day. Like my wife and I were recently looking at a daycare franchise that cost about $800,000, $1 million to open. But their requirement is that one of the owners have to be on site full time. And so that was a deal breaker for us. Although the business is exciting and we thought, wow, this is a great business, makes a lot of money, we don't want to be there full time.
That's actually a very, very interesting point, because I will say, like, a lot of like our audience and like a lot of folks that listen to the podcast are interested in passive income. So like with that, like how many franchise opportunities would you say are passive? Are a majority of them passive, or like majority you do have to be on site? And when it is passive, similar to the juice shop, how passive is it? Like how frequently do you have to go there? How many hours a week are you working?
Yeah, I think the term passive income is very cliche. And I think that it just depends on what someone's definition of passive is. So for me, the very first franchise, I actually took a few months off from work and was full time in the business, getting it up and started, the location in California.
Interesting.
So like the first couple of weeks we were open, I was there 12, 14 hours a day, right? To get the location open. Part of it was I'm a control freak and I'm OCD, and I probably didn't actually need to be there that much time.
Sure.
But it was my baby. It was like, we just put $300,000 into getting this location open. I am not leaving the success in the hands of someone else.
Somebody else's hands.
Remember Casino when Robert De Niro was like, "There's too many blueberries in the muffins." It was like he was yelling at the chefs. Like that.
That's hilarious. I probably had my blueberry moments a couple times. Yeah, if we had a couple of my old employees on there. But eventually it wound up getting to the point where once we moved, after 7 months of having the first location, we moved to Florida. I was 2,500 miles away.
Wow.
And then at that point, all I was really doing was having a call once a week with my store manager. And so in that sense, it was kind of passive. But then there was always work and stuff that I had to do. So, I think it depends on what someone's definition of passive is and how they define passive.
Sure. And in regards to opening up your first franchise, would you say there are certain ones that are easier to open or maybe cost less than others?
Yeah. So there are low cost franchises, like as an example, like a cleaning franchise. is like a lower cost franchise to open. Like
when you say cleaning, you mean like dry cleaning?
No, cleaning like residential cleaning, like house
Oh,
cleaning,
okay.
or office cleaning, like
Gotcha.
commercial cleaning.
Yeah.
So generally those are really low. The franchise fees are low. But you have to, you really have to, it's all about marketing at that point, because you got to go out there and find and get clients. You're usually not going to have someone that's just going to pop in. So that's like more of like a low cost franchise type of opportunity. And at that point, you just got to be good at marketing. And if you can market and then, figure out how to get the right staff and team in place to go out and clean the houses, and you can focus on getting the business and make that spread between what you're charging the clients and what your cost of labor is. But there are challenges that come up with that. So I would say that's more of a low cost opportunity. The easiest opportunity, if someone has the money for it, generally speaking, is an existing franchise where you're buying something that's already turnkey, it's already built and in place and has a staff and is making money, but you're going to pay a premium for that, and you better have money to be able to actually buy the business.
Got it. And in regards to money for something like the cleaning service, like, ballpark figure, how much are you saying someone needs to have to be able to purchase something like that?
Yeah, I just got off of a phone call with a guy yesterday that's that's hiring me to help him make his transition. And we're looking at a cleaning franchise where you have to have $10,000 liquid. So liquid just meaning, in savings, cash, checking, something that can be easily converted to cash while maintaining its value. And so I think the franchise fee is like $2,500. Part of that $10,000 is you having a couple of $1,000s in emergency expenses. So that's probably like the lowest opportunity for a franchise.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, so I do think one of the advantages you've had is that you worked in like the financial and investment world a little bit, right? So when you transitioned into being a franchise owner, you kind of understood P&Ls already. You understood budgeting. You understood how to make it profitable. Would you say, like, what type of skill sets would someone need prior to hopping in franchising? Like, could I go from being like a blue collar worker and just jumping right in as long as I like learn the business and everything? Or do I already need some type of specialized skill set in order to make it work?
So the short answer is no, you don't need it. But it will help.
Maybe cut down on some of those 14, 15-hour days.
Yeah. So, here's the thing. As a financial advisor, my skill set was in meeting with people and presenting to them investments and getting them to invest in those investments and doing like portfolio reviews. So although I knew about what a P&L was, I had no experience in managing a P&L and how to review a P&L and a balance sheet and all those things. I had kind of read about some of those things, but I didn't have any tangible experience with it. The beautiful thing about a franchise is you're buying a system, right? You're buying a system in which to own and operate the business. So yes, there's a lot of stuff that you'll need to learn within the system, but overall, mostly it's like plug and play. Like if you follow the system, you should be able to be successful and then hire people to do the other stuff. I mean, the mistake I made that if I could go backwards was I was doing my P&Ls from the beginning, which was stupid. Now looking back, hindsight being 2020, I learned a lot. So it wound up being valuable. But what I didn't realize was that I could have hired someone. I think I pay my bookkeeping company $170 per entity per month to do my bookkeeping. Like, why the heck was I doing my own? It makes no sense. Yeah, I did it for like a year and a half.
Oh my God.
Man. Wow.
So my thing is like, for people that don't have experience, man, there's so much that you can find the experts for cheaper than you think.
Understood. So I take it step one would be find a coach.
There you go.
Yeah. Step one, find a coach. It definitely helps because they shorten the time gap.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, just hearing you talk about it it's something that I think a lot of people have considered. I mean, how many times have we driven, you drove by a McDonald's or a Wendy's and you're like, it looks so easy. Like people just show up. They know what they want. It's a brand national or, international brand, like what work do you really need? But I'm glad you said that. It's that, you know, though you don't necessarily need all the skill sets, it does help a lot. So Nick,
It
go ahead.
does.
Yeah, and so like with that though, like a lot of times like he said, you drive by Wendy's and you see those and you think like, you know, the owner's probably making money, but it doesn't happen all the time, right? So the people who do fail, what are like some of the common reasons why people aren't successful with owning their own franchise?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say one of the reasons is that they're lazy. They're lazy and they think they're buying something that's passive, in which you just open it and it's like, all right, I sit back and relax and I don't do anything. But it just depends on the business. Some franchises you can open up, but my store in California, we opened it up from scratch day one, and the business did $30,000 in sales our second month. We became profitable, never looked back since. Man, I bought the existing location, and I bought it as a turnaround. It was struggling, and then I made a couple mistakes. The first couple months, I lost like 25 grand.
Oh wow!
Running the business. And you know, I say that so that people can understand that, like, you use that as a learning. I learned so much from that, and then I was able to pivot and make the right decisions to get the business profitable after that. But that was a key learning opportunity. I think some people get caught up and they get scared, and then they bail. And you know, one of the things I do on my YouTube channel is I try to make sure to tell bad stories too about when I owned my franchises, because I now sold the location in California and I just have the location in Florida. But like, there were so many opportunities of like spending time with my family, getting text messages about employee issues, having to deal with something. There had been times with the Florida store where employees would no show or they'd quit, not show up on their first day of work. And all of a sudden I had a tea time to go play golf, but I'm actually showing up on the weekend to go cover a shift in the store because no other staff would come in. And so although, yes, it was passive, and there were many times where I didn't hear anything for 6 months and I'm just looking at the cash flow come in, there were times where it severely inconvenienced the quality of my life. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but you got to be willing to take the good with the bad, and you learn from it.
You got to want it.
Yeah. And that's like that's the other side of entrepreneurial or living an entrepreneurial lifestyle that people don't always generally don't talk about. It's like, yeah, it's great. You don't have to work for somebody. You create your own schedule, but they don't tell you that generally speaking, you end up working more. And, you know, yes, you have opportunities. Like you said, you might go 6 months without having to deal with anything, but then you might have 2 months of you working every single day because you don't have the staff to cover it. So like, yeah, we love to do that too. We always ask that question, like, what are common pitfalls, or like, you know, in your case, what was the worst day you had, you know, owning a franchise?
Ooh, yeah, that's an easy one. Great question. I love it. So I'll just provide a little bit of context first, and I'll answer the question. So my wife and I had already sold our house in California. We were staying in an Airbnb for 3 weeks until we were going to purchase our house in Florida. And at about 3:30 in the morning, someone broke into our store.
Wow.
So basically, these robbers, they wind up breaking into about 3 stores in the shopping center at the same time. They completely smashed our windows, broke in. We had our safe bolted down to the floor. Turns out my general contractor did a crappy job of bolting it down. And so they were able to just start yanking, rip the safe out of the floor, dragged it, scraped up all the tiles, and dragged it out of the building. So a couple weeks before we were getting ready to make a cross-country move, when we were living in this Airbnb, I had to deal with this insurance claim, and I mean, it was like, it was a mess. Like, I had to get a new safe, and we had our stores boarded up. So that was a rough day.
Yeah, yeah. And he got through it.
I guess I bought another one after that.
That was one of the few days it rained in California, I suppose. Huh?
Yeah, it rains and pours, man. And so, So one question I always had, so we talked about, you said it was about $10,000 for like the cheapest somebody could get into a franchise. How about those folks out there who like are interested in like taking out some sort of like business loan? Do you recommend being completely liquid, buying cash, or do most people purchase with like a business loan? Like always was curious about how that worked.
I'd say the majority of individual franchise owners finance it.
They finance it. Okay.
Yeah. And then at that point, it's just what level are they financing it? So, some people might put 20, 30, 40, 50% down. But most people finance it. It's funny because I just recorded a video this morning, a YouTube video, and about, basically how much do franchises cost and how to pay for it. Here's my overall way to kind of answer the root of that question, which is if you want something, and you point out and you go, I want to own a franchise, and you don't have money, or you got a couple grand in your name. If you're committed, you'll figure out a way to get the money. And so, most people, if you want to get an SBA loan, small business administration loan, generally speaking, you got to put 20% in. So if you're looking at a franchise that's a $50,000 franchise, you got to put 10 grand in, you can finance the rest, right? But if let's say you go, like a guy that I talked to yesterday, he wants to own, I think, Smoothie King. And, to get one of those open, it's probably $250,000, $300,000. Well, here's an idea for, people listening right now. If you don't have any money, do the research of the business, put together some financial projections and a plan, have a brief business plan, and go out and pitch people to raise money and get investors. And put together an entity where you can go and you can open up the business cash. So that's my thing is that if you're committed, you'll figure out a way to find the money. Most people make the excuse that they don't have the money or they don't have the time. My thing is if you're committed, you'll figure it out.
They're just not committed.
Yeah, it's that group economics, man.
Like you said about why most franchises fail is that they're lazy, and that goes right back to being committed because, if you're actually committed, there is it's work, but it's not work in a sense. It's just like, no, this is what I set out to do. This is my vision. And, I've already decided what I'm willing to put into it. So, no, that's a very important point. And I think that people need to make sure they take an account for in terms of like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur or I want to run a business. It's like, okay, but do you really want to? Do you know what that means?
You're very big on planning. Like that's what I'm getting pretty much every response you give is like you plan every detail and you know the end goal that you want before you get started. And that's with everything. And in your mind, it's like the only thing that's going to stop me from getting to the end of my plan is my desire, right? Yeah. It's a very simple thing. That seems to be like the theme.
Yeah. Now, quick question. Now, so for instance, you said, for everyone listening, decide what the end goal is, right? Or try to figure out what you know about that. Now, do you start when you have your vision or your destination, do you then just work your way backwards? Because I've heard people say that before in terms of, they go about planning out their moves based on working their way backwards, like how to, to get here, I need to do these steps.
No, it's not, it's not that linear. And for someone like me, who's very analytical and kind of detail oriented, the biggest obstacle that I face in business is trying to have it all figured out. And for years, that's what held me back. And one of my closest friends built a $10 million company from scratch in 7 years. And this guy is the type of guy, he just takes action. He just goes for it. It's sloppy, it's ugly, but he takes action. And that's why he built a company so quickly. And so there's a balance between the planning and crafting out the vision and it holding you back in taking action because you think you have to have all the details. And for me personally, that's something that I still struggle with. What's the balance between me figuring out the picture and the vision and then just getting started and getting clarity as you take action? So for me, what I like to do is I like to try to capture the essence of my overall vision. Okay, what's my vision? Let's say I want to create a $25,000 a month passive income. That's my vision. How do I do that? You know what? I'm not sure, but here to answer your question, what I would do is, what's the first step that I can take to make progress? What's the very first thing that I can do to start making progress in realizing that vision? And then you start from there and you learn through your action. So as an example, like right now, my ultimate vision is to become a New York Times bestselling author and to be on stage talking to thousands and thousands of people. And one of the things that I thought of was, okay, create a YouTube channel. And I want to start talking about business and money and how people can live their dream life. But I'm like, that's too abstract. I got to gain traction. How do I gain traction? What's my current skill set? Franchising. I can start out teaching people about franchising, but this is not my ideal vision of where I want to go, but it's the tactic and strategy I'm using to gain credibility, to gain a voice, to monetize it, and then scale out from there. So for your audience, you might have, okay, this is your end vision of what you want to create. How can you start right now and put yourself in a position to play the long game and maybe be where you want to be in 5 or 10 years?
100%, man. It's that balance. It's that balance between, that visual. And that's the thing when you go back to visualizing, is like sometimes you can visualize the end game, but you can't quite visualize specifically how you're going to get there. You know what I mean? It's like, you can ask for what you want, but you don't necessarily know how it's going to present itself to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's real important, man. So many takeaways, so many jewels, a lot of gems from this story overall, man. And one thing that we kind of ask like all of our guests that come onto the show is like, what's like your hustler mantra? Hustler mantra is just like your quote or like some type of phrase or a few words that you kind of like live your life by or run your business by. So you had to give a hustler mantra. What would it be?
For me, it's the one that I try to tell myself every day, which is progress over perfection. Progress over perfection. For me, it's the most powerful because again, what I talked about before, wanting to try to have everything figured out, you just start taking action. It's like that Martin Luther King quote, which is, you don't have to see the whole staircase. You take the first step in faith. And as you take the first step, the other step reveals itself. It's like driving a car. Like when you're driving at nighttime and the headlights are shining, you don't see a mile down the road ahead of you. You see a few hundred feet and a few hundred feet, and you trust that your lights are going to stay on and the next few hundred feet are going to reveal itself.
For sure. So relatable. That's relatable, right? Yeah. That's kind of how, when we started the podcast, right? Yeah. Like we were afraid to like do video because like we didn't have webcams at the time. It was from like our crappy computer screens. And it was like, and then we didn't even have like all the equipment, the microphones and everything. But then like we were talking to our guests, like other entrepreneurs, and they were giving us similar advice. They were like, guys, just do it. Just do it. And gradually we started getting better equipment. We got our shirts on and everything.
Looking good.
We'll
make sure to get you one of these.
It's a process, man.
Tennis your size. We'll get you
definitely relatable.
So absolutely. I'd love to rock a shirt. And a quick comment on that, which is the same thing with my YouTube channel. So, I just hit 2,000 subscribers, which is super exciting. Thank you. And not the very first video, but one of the first videos I made, it was that same mindset of progress over perfection. I recorded it with my phone in like this little desk area in the living room. And I wind up having a mic on. Turns out the mic didn't even work. I recorded the first couple of videos. It's like super echoey. It didn't work. Those two videos where the mic wasn't working and the lighting was all weird, they have over 25,000 views, and some of my videos that I planned out meticulously, perfectly, threw a blazer on, it's like in the setup and it's got like 700 views, so it's like, you can try to plan it and think that things are going to be perfect, but it's not.
Hey. We like one of our previous guests told us, just do it ugly.
Do it ugly.
And just to kind of wrap things up, do you want to quickly just give a where people can find you, where they can find your just sign up if it's an opportunity where they can potentially hire you as a coach, or just like your social handles? Do you want to go ahead and give that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the easiest thing is go on YouTube, just type in Tariq Johnson, TARIQ. And then just go subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then second is on my website is over 600 people have downloaded it now. It's called my 7-Step blueprint to business profits in 60 days. It's a 28-page PDF that's jam-packed full of value, and it'll show you how to get any business profitable in less than 2 months, no matter the industry, no matter what type of business, whether a franchise or not, no matter what your situation is. And I think that's the best way to get some immediate value. And then if if someone wants to look at hiring me as a coach, read that first and make sure my message resonates with you. And then if you want, you'll know how to reach out to me from there.
See, you know when someone's successful when they're not dying to get people just to sign up.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Let's make sure this is the right fit. I don't want to waste your time. Don't waste my time. No, I love it. Yeah, I mean, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thanks for listening to the 99 Hustle podcast. Please be sure to visit 99hustle.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our amazing bonus content. Please rate, review, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. Always remember, there are 99 hustles. All you got to do is choose one.
Choose one. 99 Hustle signing out.